Hello then, folks. Welcome back to another video on the channel. My name's Ben. Good to see you. Hope you're well. Very well. Good. Now, something I thought we'd do today. I've been thinking for a while, how has Football Manager changed? Right? People ask me all the time, has the game moved? Should I get the new game? So what I thought I'd do is I'd pick a 10-year period. We'd look at FM11, we'd look at FM21, and we'll see the big differences. Some of you won't have even played FM11, and some of you still might not have picked up FM21 right now. So let's go through it. Let's look at the differences from start screen to match engines and all sorts in between. Yeah, I thought I'd just share the experience with you. Why not? Let's take a look together. A little look back to 2011 when I was 21 and life was very different. I wasn't living the dream of being a Football Manager YouTuber at that point. So, you know, very different. That said, I did have over 700 hours on FM11, so I definitely played it a fair amount. Although I realise it's May, and I've already got double that in this year's game. So then, look, you can see the two contrasting screens. I'll sort of flick between them as we go. The one frustrating thing I'm finding in FM11 right now is there's no full screen window mode, which is annoying me more than it probably should do. And the preferences themselves look radically different. If we open up the preferences on both sides, you can see immediately, right, the skins, the way the skins are laid out are so radically different from what they used to be. A lot of the options are still very, very similar. Of course, again, the way that they're different is quite obvious. There's 3 different skin choices in FM11, whereas in Football Manager these days, there's only the default skin. Like, you can obviously get different skins and put those in. You could do that back then as well. But it's quite interesting to me that they've had the choices. This year they sort of decided, we like the purple. You should like the purple. And everyone else sort of went, yeah, okay, we like the purple. There was no kinetic scrolling on this on FM11. That was not a thing. And one thing I found as well that you can't change in FM11 that you could change previously is changing attribute colors. Obviously, that is something that you can do, and I think a lot of people do these days, but you could never do in the old game. And I did not realize that until I tried to do it. And you can see just from looking at the home screens, they're a lot more basic. You could do network games way back when. Draft mode obviously was not an option right now. It might be something you've not tried or played with, and again, I'm always hoping that they improve the online modes, but it's very, very simple. And of course, on the right hand side in FM11 you've got Manager Man, where in Football Manager you've got your new created 3D model with the kits and the team names or the player names of players you've got in your recent save as well. We're using the Thames save to take a look through some of the things, the save I'm doing at the moment, from the bottom of English leagues all the way, hopefully at some stage, to the top of them. It's taken longer than I planned, but let's go in then. So starting a new game, how different was it 10 years ago to now? We'll use the most recent update databases on both, and we'll check them out as I'm loading both of them at the same time. My computer's loving this. Once again, South America has the traditional 6. The one big change is that we got Canada. Canada was added pretty recently, and Gibraltar, of course, as well, is another one that can be added on. Looking through though, there is, I don't think there's any change in any of the databases. In 10 years then, the same leagues that have been playable are still those playable leagues. My computer can run FM11 better than my 2007 Dell laptop. So that's one thing I am happy about. We'll load in a few leagues then on both of them, and we'll go forward and we'll see what comes after that. There's a few final configuration things to deal with, like this is the way it used to be done, right? Again, we'll load all of them that we can see right there. Disable player attribute masking, again, is still a thing that you can have. Changing the database sizes, you could have the biggest database you could possibly want, right? You could add all nationalities, you could add all player nations. I kind of want to know how big the player, how many players, what's the max players back then compared to now? Okay, so what I can do is I can add all the major all the major continents, I should say. So we'll do that. We'll first do that in FM21. I'm just interested in the approximate player count, the difference from then to now. All right, then. We are nearly there, as I'm just completing it on FM11. So, based on the continents, based on players of nationality in those continents, we have a custom database of 404,000. In this one, well, 311,000. So, again, they are approximate player counts, but nearly 100,000 more players in the current game compared to then. You can see, like, SI, Sports Interactive, really spread out their scouting. So the first thing to note, there are over 100,000 different players, or new players, or at least known players, I guess is the way you can look at it, across world football compared to then. Obviously, those players were probably playing at the time, but yeah, the spread of the game is pretty outrageous. I know there are some people that play the game with all of these loaded. That person's not me. So we're going to carry on. One thing that's missing is the use of the in-game editor. This was pre-in-game editor as well. So, I mean, if you do cheat, then disappointing for you, isn't it? A tougher game. All right, we have reached on FM11 the create your manager profile screen. Again, you've got your detail level stuff all mapped out. You can change some of that if you want to. The Hall of Fame is there. These screens on both of them, very, very different. Like, this is all very much in one place. Everything was sort of decided in this one area, right? Whether that be your second nationality or your past experience, right? That was always done in the same place. I just make myself Ben. I get it in the right box. Ben Carr. I can do my date of birth as well. So I want this to be right, viewers. I can make them address me as Car Ben, which I don't want them to. There are options, of course, in FM21 to do second nationality and to do languages spoken. If you're doing a Glory Hunter save, add all the languages, it makes it a lot easier. But then you're straight in on FM11, straight into picking the team that you want to manage. Whereas that's not the case anymore. The 3D engine allows you to make, obviously, your own manager profile. You can kind of do this in any which way you want. You can even add your own picture if you want to. You can generate something, randomize the face as many times as you want. I mean, we'll pick one that looks like me. That couldn't be more accurate, could it? And even in the last few years, right, the 3D characters have been a little bit more involved in the way that they've built up the match engine and tried to make it a little bit more real. Obviously, regen faces or new gen faces have been a big topic of discussion on whether they've gone backwards or they've gone forwards in the game. And yeah, they've definitely tried to make them more lifelike and have their own sort of style in FM21. But whether that's working or not, I guess is the debate of everyone who plays the game. All right, we'll go to one of their licensed leagues in FM11. We'll do the same thing. Of course, they didn't have the German license way back when. They had FC Bayern. We'll go to Bayern Munich in both of these. Why not? We might as well. So FC Bayern predicted to finish first. You've got a whole club culture down there and all sorts of things. In this, you've got sort of the detailed player information, which is just load up the actual club and go from there. We'll take over both of them then. They've got a bigger stadium now, so shout out to Bayern. Okay, but I'm not even done. So you pick your manager in this, but now, of course, you get to do your manager style, another big difference from previously. So just getting into the game, right, they try and make that experience a little bit longer, right? There's an announcement about when you're being hired. Of course, those things do exist in FM11. Like, you've got a news item that says you've been hired, but it's not quite done in the same way, with the same sort of pizzazz as it is now in FM21. And again, you get more detail, right? They give you the club background. And again, this sort of thing all existed before, but they've just repackaged it and made it look slightly more appealing as you take over a new club. And that's one thing I want to say, really, that one of the big differences is just how they've made the game look. I think that's sometimes one of my criticisms, is sometimes they repackage things to be better in terms of playability, right? It's that quality of life thing that you get with Football Manager. And sometimes they just repackage information that's already there. This isn't something that's been repackaged, though. Club Vision is completely new. Nothing like this existed 10 years ago. There was, I mean, win stuff was kind of the general rule, and that was kind of it. You had your season expectations. The minimum expectation was to win the first division with Bayern. I'm sure it's very similar in FM21, win the Bundesliga. And now in FM21, right, you've got all the tactics inductions. You've got the club vision thing that you can accept or alter in the way you want to, right? You're told about other transfers going on in the world of football, whereas it's a lot more team specific, I'm finding, like this time around. And one thing I'm not mentioning, and it's like so blatantly obvious, viewers, is look how different they look. It's a completely different world. The taskbar or the manager bar at the top here, like the toolbar, I guess you'd call it, right, is all at the top. And I remember it being like this for years as well, absolutely years. And when it went to the side, it was like, well, this is a big change for us. Of course, you can see in my version of FM21, and you can do this in your own games, I have just the side icons ticked. Of course, you can have them named from a very like basic level, right? You've got your profile, you've got the overview, you've got your news and your search filters and things like this, right? And those still exist over on this side as well. Now they're called scouting. Your inbox and your home page make up a lot of what you're seeing on this first page. Your history, again, like it's all now encompassed in very much the home page. If you want to find out other information, it's not as straightforward as it once was. And even things that now are hidden sort of in the top area, right? Before, there was just this world tab. You could see everything on this one. Over on this side, you've got like, the leading transfers, right? The rankings, the media sources, things like that. And again, these all exist, but in a completely different way. You can see every media source from back in the day. Is that the same now? I mean, yes, it is exactly the same now. It's not a page I think any of us ever go on. But if you want to know all the media sources in your Football Manager game, well, you can do. So let's look at the squad screens on both then. Again, I guess the difference is on this one, I've got the custom one. We'll go on the general info one to begin with. And by and large, they look pretty much the same. Again, general info or selection info is probably a better one to do. Again, the comparison, there's not a huge... And again, the look of it is very different, and the way that you would access the second team and the 19s has changed pretty recently in this year's game. Again, there's no development center. That just does not exist, right? There is no such thing as the development center. That is your under 19s and their training and their tactics. And again, this is kind of the development center. That is just something very new. One of the big things that's changed is Thomas Muller, who is no longer 20 in game, now 30. Again, 10 years on. Has he got any of his attributes vastly different? His technique is still 12. Some things never change. I guess the one thing to mention as well on these two squad screens is, can you spot the differences in attributes? Because they're there. So we now have vision is one of the options that we have, which was probably previously taken for creativity, you might argue. And influence has been changed for leadership. Now, I'll do a video at some stage talking about some of the attributes I think should be in the future games, right? Whether tackling and passing should be a little bit more detailed in their descriptions. But it's interesting, isn't it? Over 10 years, they've definitely sort of settled with, we've got these as our attributes and we're happy with them. I'm going to blow some minds for those of you that never realized. Something that's not changed is they're still in alphabetical order. So if you wondered why they were in this order, it's because they're alphabetical. Some of you will never have noticed or cared, to be fair. But something else, again, I want to point this out really, is that you've got the overview, right? And you've got the attributes and the information and the happiness. This now, information-wise, has also been put into one section. The amount of information that you're seeing on both screens, right? They're on the same monitor. So these monitors are identical, and the amount of information you're getting on either of them is vastly different from what you get. Like that's one thing I guess we should have mentioned straight away. The sheer amount of information I'm getting on one player profile screen without having to go to these additional screens, right, where all of this sort of stuff is visible, is pretty stark. And the detail in which the squad reports now are there in front of your eyes, right? There was before, to say it was pretty basic and pretty general is a bit of an understatement, right? Fortunately for Thomas Muller, he doesn't have any cons. Again, you've got the abilities and the potential abilities and the current abilities, and they sort of still exist, again, within some of these reports. But the level of detail that we have now, there is a development tab, which previously didn't really exist, right? The training was vastly different as well. The game's come a long way in 10 years, right? And that shouldn't really be a surprise, but I think sometimes we just sort of forget, right? You get the additions year on year and you forget how many little incremental changes have come about in the last 10 years. And it is vast. Okay, let's look at the tactics. And we'll start with FM11, and we'll obviously, you know how much it's developed, and this looks very, very different. So when you click it on FM11, this is what you get to begin with. When you do it on FM21, this is what you get. You get to choose a tactical style. With this, on FM11, it's very much, well, create your own style. Do whatever you want. Now, what was interesting in FM11 is they had two different ways in which you could build and make tactics, right? They tried to bring in roles a little bit more into players. If we just, what we'll do is we'll just quick pick the side very, very quickly with Yonka. Thank you, mate. And you can see that you've got these automatic and attacking and defensive roles on players that previously weren't in the game. Again, the tactics screen is all on this as well, with the fixtures and the backroom staff and the squad numbers and the squad all lined. It's so different to now. Very strange. Of course, all sort of drop-down menus and different filters and tables. But yeah, you had the idea of roles being far more sort of evident in the game. They weren't in for a long time. And the reason you know that all of these things were relatively new within the game is that in the tactics option, you could convert to the classic way of playing. This is not an option anymore. So we'll stick a typically sort of German tactic in Gegenpress on them. We'll create the same tactic, but look, you had these arrows that could point in any direction. I say any direction you want them to. They could go up or down. Are they attacking or are they defending? You pick. I remember one of my classic formations. Let me build my favorite formation back in the day. So if you're out there, this is what I played. I don't know if anyone else played a similar thing. I'd play a narrow 4-3-3, and yeah, that was how we would approach things. And look, just on this here, the mentality and the way that you change things, all slider based. You'd be able to change these as much as you want. And again, now you come to tactics. You've got your in possession options, your transitional options, the out of possession options. It makes me wonder that if you hadn't played Football Manager for a long period of time, say you hadn't played since FM11, and then you came to Football Manager now, the information overload is quite something. Like player instructions were the same thing. You could be so defined, or it feels more defined anyway. I say that the sliders aren't particularly slidey. There are a few options. Oh, no, I say that, right? Like you can have short passing, but to what level? How short do you want your passing? Closing down and pressing, the whole pitch, your own half, your own area. They feel a lot more. It's interesting that the closing down specifically feels a lot more defined than it is right now, especially for individual players. So if we look at Tolisso as an example, obviously it will probably depend on the role in which he's playing and the amount of pressing that he does compared to the rest of the team. But again, the options that you saw me click through there of Tolisso compared to if you did it with a player instruction on the likes of Schweinsteiger back in the day, right? Some of these get locked out actually, so maybe they are based upon his playing style and what he's doing. Okay, so if I set him to be like a generic midfielder, then I can alter more what he's doing. Again, I can define everything to a really certain level. What's interesting is like if I've got these players that play centrally, I can kind of do anything with them. Which is this? They changed it, right? They made it so you couldn't manipulate it to this degree. Like there's so many things that you now can't do, right? They restricted us in a sense of, there's obviously a lot more that you can do, but they restricted us in terms of being able to make players so defined. Like it was the game was known for being a little bit more game breaking. And again, they've taken that away a little bit. I'm sure there's people out there with tactics that are still game breaking, but you know what I'm saying, right? You can't be as defined. So in FM21, I'm just going to holiday so we can play Bayern's second team, so we can take a look at the differences in the match engines. I think that's something that people would really like to see. Obviously, we kind of know if you're playing this year's game and you watch the videos of people that make content on it or streams, whatever, you know what it looks like. But then the comparison, when I'm flicking between the two, that will become more obvious how different it is from 10 years ago. Just before we get to game day, something I've not mentioned that is like really obviously a massive thing now are squad dynamics. That I'm trying to figure out if there is a squad dynamics. Obviously, like there's nothing remotely close to squad dynamics other than like backroom advice, which I guess is kind of giving you information on how players feel about you. Other than that, it's pretty limited. Okay, then we're going to go for, I don't necessarily think 4-4-2 is the best system for this team right now, as Miroslav Klose is in the side. We'll do a first 11. We'll do the first team versus the second team. And again, we want to look at the engine of both of these. So, over on the FM21 scene, a lot of things that you are almost certainly familiar with. Players warming up at the start of the game, different camera angles being showcased, and then you've got, again, I assume we're going to see the team lineups, are we? As we sort of pause briefly on this, are we going to? Okay, so the match preview, it finally gives you like the list of the teams. This is the list of the teams way back when. Of course, this is something you're probably familiar with anyway. You're getting a little bit of tactical guidance in FM21. In FM11, you're getting the lineups. You're getting some match analysis here, which gives you a little bit, and a scrolling bar. Wow, look at us go. Predictions to be made, the odds and things like that. When you go into the dressing room and you look at the opposition instructions, I don't know if you can ask your assistant to apply some opposition instructions. I think to the whole team. I don't know if that's just individual players. No, okay, so it's done it to all of the members of the team. That's something that still exists now. Again, you kick off in FM 21. And again, the teams walk out and things slowly get underway. Of course, we'll put the key highlights on. In fact, for both games here, we will go to full match so we can get a real feeling of how it works. I'll keep the highlights at the average speed for both as well, so you can get a real true reflection of what they wanted you to see when the game first came out. And I will use the generic middle road TV angles for both as well, so we can, again, really compare the two. I'm getting game sound. For FM. Oh, 21's giving me game sound. There's highlights going on. Pause. How do I stop there? Is there a sound option? Where is the sound? How do I stop the sound? Okay, right. Sorry about that, everyone. That horrifying. That is the scariest part of every single Football Manager going. Graphical detail, we'll make sure everything's on high. I would assume it probably was anyway. Where is this? Play sounds, get rid. I think the first thing to say, we'll come to FM11 first. The player movement and the way in which they go in different directions and the way in which the ball moves. He's done a lovely back heel there, it must be said. The way the ball moves, the shadow on the ball looks slightly different as well, I dare say. I don't know. This is brighter, which I find quite interesting. Player movement is a lot more jerky, right? It's nowhere near as fluid as there. Thomas Muller goes for goal. It's a screamer of an effort from Thomas Muller. Unbelievable stuff. The crowd movement, I'm going to say, is not great. I don't think anyone will be offended 10 years later. I'm really showcasing how far the game's come, so everyone should be happy about this. We've got an over-the-top view here to check out the goal again. As the ball's into Muller, it slows it down, as it still does now, in slow motion. Lovely little bit of bend on the ball from Thomas Muller. And just to give you a stark contrast then of what it looks like from this to now, we'll come over to Joshua Kimmich, who picks up the ball in FM21 into Sule, to Liso, and there is just sort of quite a nice fluidity to both of these things. What I will say is that I find the average speeds in Football Manager really interesting. They're not quick enough, are they? No one plays surely on the lowest speed setting. I traditionally always play sort of like 1 up from the middle or 2 up from the middle, and it just feels a little bit more alive. I don't know if that would be the case as well in this version. If you up the match speed, do they both now feel a little bit more, I guess realistic is the word I'm looking for. I'm now looking back at 11. I've put it up one little bit, and it feels too responsive. It feels too quick with the way in which the ball's been pinged around. The way they actually pass it feels a bit fast to me. The decision making feels a lot more obvious, and again the way they're moving sort of on like a figure of 8. You remember how the old Xbox controllers where you could move up diagonal, left diagonal, down diagonal, right diagonal, up, right? That's basically what it feels like you're playing, and that was the way the match engine was kind of developed. Pitch wise, this might be does there appear to be a little bit more detail on the pitch on FM11 to FM21? I don't know. It's kind of strange, right? I think it's all to do with lighting, if I'm honest. I think the more realistic of the two, it's very, I don't know. I guess that's a question for you. Which one do you like? I mean, visually, without then seeing the engine and the graphics engine move, as I need to concede on one of them here. Which one do you prefer? Just sort of looking at them both, and again, the way in which the ball and the players move obviously is the big factor as that shot goes wide. And the animations, like the goalkeeper spent some time on the floor there. All right, Sebastian Schweinsteiger puts in the cross, so a decent delivery, put behind. But now you can see like the camera automatically zoomed in. I never remember it being this good. I think that's what's surprising about it 10 years ago. But I think in terms of animations, right, the differences are... It's so much smoother now, so much more fluid. Decision making seemingly happens like knowingly. Whereas before, I remember playing the old FMs and thinking they're making decisions when they get the ball, and it's almost like the intelligence of the players is just so much smarter now. Again, game development has moved on a lot in 10 years, but the way it's been applied to Football Manager is really good. So this was just sort of a general look through both games. I thought I would just talk about the differences. Again, there are so many other differences in the game. If you've got your old version of FM11, or maybe you've got a different version of the game, an older version, open it up, have a flick through, see what you make of it. What do you think the biggest change is in 10 years? That's sort of the question I'm going to leave you with. What is the biggest change? Is it the 3D engine? Is it the way in which we develop players? Is it the way in which we see player profile screens? Is it the way that league seasons feel a little bit more in depth? Again, your thoughts, leave them in the comment section, please do. If you'd like to see me compare maybe some other versions of Football Manager with another version of Football Manager, again, let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it. If you want to see some more, make sure you subscribe, and we love with care from DoctorBenjy until next time. I'll see you again very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I say, yeah, make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and I'll see you again. Goodbye.